Salud, hello, hello, hello. I am the Rasta Witch. Here's where we learn the way of the Yan Sui Rasta, which is to say, my kind of Ital. Please subscribe and begin your own kind of Yan Sui witchcraft. All roads lead to Rome. Home. I do. I think everything's funny. I'm like that in real life too. I try not to be so I don't bug people, but it's just ridiculous. Okay, so now we're approaching the end of the Bible discussions playlist. Some of my playlists I'll like the one about tarot, and like some of them will just be ongoing. Some videos I do in the future won't even belong to a playlist anymore, you know? But some of my playlists, like the early Rastafarian history one, that one's already done. I don't think I'll ever do any more videos on that one. That's just necessary that I have that reference on my channel since this is Rasta. And since Rasta is a biblical thing, I have the Bible discussions playlist. So right now this video is about transitioning from everything that's been said so far in the Bible discussions playlist to the ending part. We're going to end on a study about Moses. Okay, so okay, so I'm going to do this by doing a couple book reviews. This book is called The 21 Lessons of Merlin, a study in Druid Magic and Lore by Douglas Monroe. Okay, so this video is about the 21 lessons that Merlin gave the would-be King Arthur. So what a lot of people don't know about the tribe of Ephraim's early history, the British Isles, is that just like how the European came to America and took over the land from the natives, who were a bunch of shamans and one with nature and everything we know about that, and killed them and forced them to convert, you know, to Christianity, and all that happened that way. Before that ever happened, the same thing happened on the British Isles. The Romans conquered the British Isles, and the Druids and the Ladies of Avalon, they used to be our school teachers, our government officials, our librarians, our shamans, our doctors, and healers, and you know, they kind of did all that, you know, and then the Romans, when they came to conquer, they killed all the Druids. They said that they're devil worshippers and heathens, and you know, I don't know if they used the word heathen, but you know, same kind of thing we know with American history. And but many of the things survived. So this is a story about the would-be King Arthur. He was going to be king, you know, so of the British Isles. And so the Catholic Church, you know, was that all these things were still happening. They were still demonizing and killing Druids, and trying to stamp out the old ways and everything. And but like we know, the Catholic Church, whether it was in Italy or France or England or wherever they were, doing their thing, because they did this all through Europe. I would know. I used to live in Spain. In Spain, the Moors, who are Arabs, conquered Spain, and the Romans conquered Spain, and so that's why the ancient buildings are, you know, and also their language and many things have either Arabic roots or much Roman roots, you know. Same thing in England. The Romans conquered that, but when they used to conquer, they would leave some of the old way. They would kind of like mingle together, because that's what they even did with themselves. The Roman Catholic Church, it's called the Roman Catholic Church for a reason. Right there in Rome and Italy, they mixed together their old religion with the new religion, and under the name of the new religion, which was Christianity. And so the Romans did that everywhere else in Europe, including the British Isles. So the Druid Merlin, who may have been many different men, I mean, a lot of this is myth and some of it's true. The whole point of this book is to make, it's an attempt to try to bring together things that we know that are true, to kind of take out the true things of the legend of Merlin and Arthur, and try to find what really happened, in real life. Like he never really pulled a sword from a stone and things like that. But what did he did learn from Merlin. There were many things that were the same. Of course, J.R.R. Tolkien was a master's degree in Anglo-Saxon histories. He was an expert at this stuff, and many of the things that Merlin said are things that Gandalf says. It's obvious that Gandalf is based on Merlin. So this is the root, and so these things, both the Lord of the Rings and Merlin and Arthurian lore. All these things are the roots of all role-playing games, video games. I mean, it just, this is big stuff, And so this book is an attempt to try to figure out the actual root of it and make sense of it. So the way the story goes is the Catholic priest representing the Catholic Church goes to Merlin, representing the old ways and the Druids, and makes a deal with them. Look, this will be favorable to you guys. What I need you to do is I need you to teach Arthur the old ways, because he's going to be king one day, and that way he can, he can know some of the old ways. We're not really trying to stamp out all the old ways. We're just trying to establish the Catholic Church. So you have to promise, if we let you teach Merlin, if we let you teach Arthur the old ways, you need to promise that you won't teach him anything negative about the Catholic Church, that it will all be something compatible with the Catholic Church. So Merlin teaches Arthur this Catholic witchcraft, which exists today. By now you should know, I use the symbols of Catholicism. On my dad's side, we're from Salem, Massachusetts, and we're Catholics, and that can be an extra witchy thing. The Catholics do candles and incense, and the connections are many, and so those symbols are ready to be used as a witch, and you don't have to be a Catholic. It doesn't make you a Catholic, But this book is extra interesting because it's not about the Catholic Church, but it's all useful from a witch that might be into Catholic witchcraft. My previous video, How a Rasta Witch Prays, I have a link in the description box about another witch that talks about why she does Catholic witchcraft. It's kind of a common thing. So Merlin teaches Arthur how, the old ways with 21 lessons, and they're not like enseguida. They're not like one after another. They're sometimes he'll teach him a lesson and won't see him again for another year or so, or months later, probably more normally, the next season. The Druids were big into, poems and songs and stuff that had to do with the different seasons of the year. Their holidays were all one with nature and about the seasons of the year, the solstices and the equinoxes and whatnot. So the way that they did it according to this book was they had and you'll realize that much of what we believe as a Yan Sui, much of what we believe comes from this book. Much. Both of these books, that's why I'm showing them to you. This is both a book review and a book reference to many of the teachings of the Yan Sui. There's the white robe Yan Sui, the blue robe Yan Sui, and the green robe Yan Sui. If you've been to my other channel, Angie's The Spiral Times channel. I have whole playlists about all those things. The white robe, the Merlin here is a white robe druid who is an elder. The white robe. Arthur here has a green robe, which is an apprentice. And then most druids are blue robe, which is a bard. And so these are the 21 Lessons of Merlin. This is a really good book. I read some of the trilogy. I read The Hobbit, The Fellowship of the Ring, and halfway through The Two Towers to my son when I was a stay-at-home parent. And he asks. He said, "I'm getting sick of this. These books, they're kind of like the Bible in a way." And he said, "I'm sick of this. Can we just watch the movies and just move on to the next book?" And so the next book I did was this one, and I read this to my son. So I've read this a couple times myself, and once to my son, and use it constantly. It's an incredible book. So here, what's happening in this picture, you can see this box right here. This is like one of the first lessons. Merlin says, okay, how you start? You have to have a magical weapon for fire, water, air, and earth, you know? And he showed him, this is my box where I keep my symbols. And he opens it up and shows him, you know, what he uses for his magic weapon representing fire, what he uses for his magic weapon representing water, air, and earth. And he says, and your assignment is to find your symbols for those things, you know. And then he always disappears and reappears. Arthur goes out of the forest, and all of a sudden Merlin appears somehow, you know. And then the next lesson begins. So then he kind of disappears, and that's his lesson. Another lesson Merlin shows him his garden. The real Merlin, his friend wasn't an owl like in the cartoon. His friend was actually a raven, and he lived in a cave. And outside the cave, he had a garden. And the garden had one section was plants representing fire, and one section was plants representing water, and one section was plants representing air, and one was plants representing earth. You know, the fire plants tended to be red, and the water plants tended to be blue, and such, you know. It's just really cool. He goes, you know, if you've looked at my playlist on the Yan Sui holidays, you'll see that every year for Samhain I read, and for Beltane I read the chapter about one of the lessons is Beltane, and one of the lessons is Samhain, and which is Halloween if you didn't know. And those are Yan Sui holidays, and blah blah blah. Super cool. So you learn much about how to be a Celtic shaman. Here's the other book, the Celtic Shaman, by John Matthews. This book reads like a handbook. It's incredible. It tells you, you know, it's more like a handbook. It doesn't go over like the history or anything. It's just very practical. This is how you make a drum. This is how you make a wand. This is how you make a robe. This is, you know, this is how you do this and that. And it's just a really practical book about how a bard makes songs. It's about being one with nature, about using plants. The reason an apprentice has a green robe is because while you're an apprentice, you need to be vegetarian, and you make your robe is green because you soak it in plants to make it green, and your main focus is becoming one with plants and nature. And then you just that's your apprenticeship, you know, because a druid is one with nature, and everything's done according to nature, and it is this book is killer. Both these books are really good, and so basically all over, you know, the other part of my family is you know, it's just like studying Rasta. You're learning about all these African shaman bush doctors, and you start to say, hey, you know, I want to learn about my own people's my ancient ancestors, shamans, you know. and that's what this is, you know. But the other side of my family is French, and there's a whole rich history in there too, you know, of witchcraft and everything. You know, a better word for shaman in Europe is witches. You know, a druid and the ladies of Avalon, these are witches. You know, and this is witchcraft. And I like, as far as the French side of me, I'm not really big into Aleister Crowley like everybody else. I'm more into Eliphaz Levi, who was a Catholic witch. You know, was into Catholic witchcraft, and as someone from France, and is just fantastic. Especially his book Transcendental Magic by Eliphaz Levi. It's a big, thick book. It's nice. It reads like an encyclopedia for everything about the entire subject of magic. It can, like, no book compares to that. Another little twist. So I'm actually doing, I guess, 4 books in this. The Tao of Jeet Kune Do. Another little spin-off that the Jan Sui Rasta does is we're really close with Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee is a big deal. He is one of the main Jan Sui prophets, and this is his book. If you've ever seen the movie about his life, where his son Brandon Lee plays him. There's other movies, but I prefer the one with Brandon Lee, his son, playing his father. In that he's trying to teach Americans. He's going to school studying philosophy in America, and and he washes dishes. And he was a street fighter when he lived in China, and so he has a whole background learning from Ip Man and China, and he wants to teach these things in America, but he's not allowed. The Chinese weren't allowed back then, so they said, okay, we'll let you teach Americans your martial arts, but you have to beat our toughest guy, you know. And so he fights the toughest guy, and then the guy gives him a cheap shot and breaks his neck, and he's paralyzed, and he thinks he's never gonna walk again, and so he's just really angry. And his wife came in and the movie slaps down a notebook and a pen and says, because Bruce Lee's about ready to give up on all his dreams and everything. She says, if you can't walk, then let's write this out. And she says, tell me what your martial arts is. His martial arts is called Jeet Kune Do. And she starts writing it down, and then he finishes it. As you can see, some of it isn't even in English. Some of there's whole pages just in Chinese, if I can get to one. I don't know. You want to wait for me to do that, but yeah. So it has like diagrams and everything. The first whole section of it's called Zen, where it isn't even about this whole first part of it is called Zen. It's not even about martial arts. It's about the philosophy of the Jeet Kune Do is based on, and then it's just the basic components and foundation of Jeet Kune Do. I'll leave a link in the description box to a playlist of a follower of Bruce Lee that knows a lot more about the martial arts than I do. Yeah, that's Bruce Lee is kind of always with us in our hearts. And Jeet Kune Do is about being the nature of water, and it's about being like how Jan Sui's, you know, we learn from everything. We cherry pick from the Bible, we cherry pick from this, and we kind of create our own kind of witchcraft. You know, all roads go to Rome. That whole concept Bruce Lee would call the nature of water. So we collect his movies too. I love his movies. Let's see, are these kind of in order? Yeah, more or less. You got The Way of the Dragon. You've got The Big Boss. You've got Game of Death. You've got Fist of Fury. You've got, and some of them have more than one name, you know, like Fist of Fury sometimes is called the Chinese Connection. And, you know, and then after he died, he was in the middle of writing Game of Death 2. but he died before they could make it. So some of the scenes in this, he's actually a cutout cardboard of Bruce Lee and someone talking behind it like Bruce Lee. And they just kind of pieced together what little notes and just everything they knew about it and created a movie. It's good. A lot of fans don't consider that a true Bruce Lee movie. I couldn't disagree more. I think it's a fantastic movie. I strongly recommend it. It's really good. And then, of course, the best Bruce Lee movie, if you're going to get any one movie, you want to get this. Enter the Dragon. And this was his big last movie. But this is the 2-disc special edition, which I strongly... If this is the time to, yes, get the special edition, you know. The 2 CDs. Oops, this one fell. You know, because it has footage of him practicing martial arts in his backyard and people talking about Jeet Kune Do. It's killer, so killer. This movie is the backbone of Yan Sui. All these things all those books I just showed you are just as big of a part as the Bible and the autobiography. The autobiography is kind of elevated above the others. The Bible is like we came out of the era of Sardis and went to Philadelphia, and now we're in Laodicea. You know, the Bible is a Sardis thing, you know, and the Philadelphia was created out of roots and connections with Sardis, but Laodicea, which is today, is made out of connections of Philadelphia. Of course, I'm referring to the book of Revelations. And the church eras, which are really eras of time. Because the purpose of life is to know thyself, gnosis, and and Zen, you know. Know thyself is Zen, you know. Anyway, so now we're going to go into Moses. We'll talk a little bit about how Jesus was actually a magician, was a witch. And so like the thing with that is I'll say one thing about that in this video. One Bible expert, a theologian, Dan McClellan, uses a really good analogy, you know, about why the Bible is actually not really a monotheistic book. The Old Testament was they believed in the other gods. They didn't believe there was just one God and all the other ones are not a god. That's not really the roots of where these things come from. They believed that the other gods were gods, but the Yahweh was the one that you're supposed to stick with. So he compares it to like he's a Denver Broncos fan, and he doesn't like the Raiders. So if you ask him about the Raiders, he would say the Raiders aren't even a real football team. You know, he doesn't mean the Raiders aren't a real football team. They are a real football team. It's just that's the rival, you know. So it's like a rivalry competition thing, you know. You had to fight for everything you had back then, you know. And that's why we came out of the ashes of killing witches and LGBT people. LGBT people didn't make babies, which you didn't have to convert, and were an asset to the farm and the wealth, and witches were replacing the religion, where they had everybody convinced there's a man in the sky, and that the Pope in the Bible was the word of God, and so you have to do everything they say. You know, you wouldn't want to give up a mind control like that, you know. So so that's why. But if you look at it again, and you look at the data and the facts, calling Moses and Jesus, who are the two people that the Bible is mostly based on, witches, is very accurate, and the Kabbalah just puts a stamp of approval on that. It's more of a rivalry thing. So now we'll go into Moses and Jesus and end kind of on a note of witchcraft, which is one of the points, I believe, of the purpose of the life of Haile Selassie. And then next I'll work on the playlist of Haile Selassie and the opening of the 7 seals, which is what the Lion of Judah is supposed to do.